Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and a new framework released by the White House. And I want to welcome back to the show for your umpteenth appearance. I don't know how many it's been now. Founder of Whirlybird Labs, right? Am I saying it right?
Yep,
Whirlybird Labs and
you are.
AI guru, Jason Haas. Jason, welcome back.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for having me back. Always great to have a conversation with a friend, colleague, a peer, somebody who I value immensely. So, looking forward to today's conversation about U.S. government, EU, and AI governance. Yay!
Well, let's jump right into it because as soon as I saw this announcement, I thought of you right off the bat because you and I have had these conversations in the past. And I wanted to get what your thoughts were because they released this, when was it? March 25th. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the White House releasing this AI usage framework.
Right, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share an opinion around it. First take is awesome. A US government level AI framework. Holy cow, what a great opportunity. At the same time, it's terrifying. Um, the but before we get into the terror part of it, let's talk about this framework. It's got 7 goals in it. The first goal, and I think we can get all behind a lot of these goals, protecting children, infrastructure and security, IP and creator rights, free speech protection, removing innovation barriers, AI-ready workforce, and federal preemption framework, and some other related legislation efforts and things like that. On paper, sounds amazing. And then I go and I read the news and I see how the US government is conducting itself and the chaos it's creating around the world. And that's where it gets into the terror part. But let's lean into this a little bit more. I'm all for the government developing an AI usage framework. I think it's absolutely critical. In the United States, what we're seeing right now is a patchwork of state AI legislations and frameworks. And in the US, that means we could have 50 different laws and governance around AI. So if you're in one state doing business in another, it could get really tricky really, really quick. And to me, it's not so much the question that whether the government should develop a framework, because it should, it is. It's whether they can move at a pace that doesn't render the framework obsolete before it's enacted or enabled. So that's the dilemma here. We're dealing with a fast moving target. So those 7 broad policy goals span multiple congressional committees, which, that's also a challenge. There's jurisdictional fragmentation, potentially energy and commerce, judiciary, homeland security, health, science, armed services all touch the same topic, which to me, that sounds like turf wars. And right now we have turf wars between, state AI framework and governance, and now the federal government doing its own AI framework and governance. So there's the challenge. It's just shifting. As a practitioner, I think it's really important that we have something at the federal level. If I look at things that are already out there, like the EU AI Act, or Canada has its own AI Act, those are really critical at that national level to bring conformity with how AI is applied, used, adapted, abused, so on and so forth in our countries. So I think it's critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic that the US government in its current state can execute effectively.
I'm interested with the word you used, the pace of things, because one of the questions that I thought of after, I reached out to you with a list of questions was, are we late with some of this legislation or framework or anything like that? Because the pace of AI is so fast. It's developing so fast, and people are finding so many ways to use it. Is this framework, and we know how long things take to implement and review and update, that it'll just be worthless by the time it's quote unquote final.
Right. And yeah, that's the challenge, but that's also the opportunity. The US government, if it chooses, can try to move fast and wrap their arms around this. Are they late to the party? I think so, but it's also better late than never. The states, leaned in a while ago. I think Colorado leaned in, which is where I'm from, about a year ago or so with its own state-based legislation, and there's been challenges there. Colorado is by far a great example, but it's the example that I have. So they've had some challenges with their implementation and enforcement of their own AI framework and act. At the US government level, you bet they're late and they move slow like a glacier. AI is changing daily, hourly at times, it feels like. So trying to track this moving target with a slow moving process, there's going to be challenges there. And by the time this framework becomes actual law or an act or whatever the government ends up doing with it, um, the burden is going to be keeping it updated with the latest technology. And again, reflecting on the US government and its historical precedents around keeping in tune with fast moving targets around technology specifically, it's not great. I think there's other nations, other countries that do a much better job. None of it's perfect, by the way. So if I reference saying the EU AI Act is like the standard I'm looking at, which it is, it's also imperfect, but that's been around for a while. And as of August 2026, the teeth that it has around the critical operational type technology and AI use cases will have enforcement and teeth and whatnot. And here the US is still at the drawing board and things are moving rapidly and ever changing and whatnot. So there's challenges. I'm hoping the US government is up for it. I'm hoping that they can find some unification around this and move quickly, as in quickly, like maybe in a year they can get it done.
We'll see. With this framework, we talk about AI being this great innovator, and we can develop so many new things, and look at things we hadn't even thought of before because maybe we aren't there yet ourselves. And then to put restrictions on innovation kind of seems counterproductive because sometimes from mistakes, something good happens. That's how 3M created their, sticky notes. That's how that came about by a mistake. So could we be putting a framework or some restrictions in place that could prevent some of those mistakes from being wild successes? Could we be shooting ourselves in the foot type thing?
That's always an option. And, being human and imperfect, it's a natural reaction to get in our own way and disrupt things. Also, governance and laws and things like that can be viewed as a disruptor to innovation. However, think of it like building codes, like when you're putting up a new construction or whatever it might be. They, those type of codes restrict how you build, but they don't restrict whether you build. So think about this from this innovation standpoint. It's going to put guardrails on it, but it's going to help restrict how you build the AI, how you manage AI, how it maybe interacts with your population, community. Think of those seven goals: protecting children, infrastructure, security, IP and creator rights, so on and so forth. So it's not going to say you can't build. Um, really thinking about this because it's a great question. I don't believe it's going to be that much in the way. Innovation is critical. It's part of this act of they want to move fast and break things in a way. They have this thing called regulatory sandboxes, which enable AI developers a space to test and launch new technologies with modified and waived regulations. But if you dive into that, that's also a challenge because that might be a pay to play or that influence in the government to have restrictions removed. Do you think Anthropic and OpenAI might have maybe a little bit more wiggle room than maybe some small niche, small business? Well, chances are that there's going to be some inequity here. Also, there's potential for expanded access to federal data sets in AI-ready formats to be used by industry and academia. That can be challenging too, because what federal data sets and does it have PHI, PII? Is it voter registration? Is it healthcare? What type of data are we handing over? And when it goes into those regulatory sandboxes where we've as the US government have written a more of a blank check saying, oh, move fast, break things. I think of Elon Musk. And to be honest, this whole thing feels very Elon-ish of wanting to move fast. And I get it to a point, but there's so much downside to this too.
Yeah.
So, as we expand the access to federal data sets and these regulatory sandboxes that can get waivers, also there's in the US governance portion is there's no federal AI regulator. There's not as I call it in businesses, sometimes I look for a throat to choke. Horrible way to say it, but who is that accountable person in the process and in the federal government with this particular thing? It's a patchwork of agencies. So all of a sudden, Department of Transportation might view it differently than Department of Justice, which may view it differently than Homeland Security or Department of War. I like to call it Department of Defense. And all of a sudden, you get this patchwork, and there's going to be potentially not competition, but some conflict internally on how AI is governed or how fast it can move. Do you want it to really move fast in the Department of War?
Yeah.
Well, probably not. I mean, just look at the news items. If we look at the Iran war, there's some challenges there when we move fast with things and different type of data, so on and so forth. Anyways, I don't want to make this political. There's also some targeted restrictions in high-risk domains. So like child safety, deepfakes, AI-enabled fraud. So there's some good side to this as well, where potentially we can put some teeth into enforcement around deepfakes, cloning, protection of intellectual property, so on and so forth. Again, the biggest challenge is so many agencies might be involved with how they regulate AI at the federal level, and it doesn't seem like they communicate well across board right now, I think there's going to be some challenge and some conflict because of it.
Well, what you just said near the end there was going to be my next question is how do we go about enforcing it? Not just, White House, but enforcement overall. Because I could be sitting here at home and do whatever I want. How am I going to, as you say, have those teeth, find me, because I'm not using it right. But an organization doing the
Right.
exact same thing, there is teeth and they do get, regulated and you can't do that. But so how do we go about enforcing AI usage overall?
Right. And it's going to be a challenge because if it is made, it's politicized in thinking in divisive US politics, that's going to be a governance risk in itself, is just the political side, let alone getting down to actually application to industries, to individuals for enforcement and whatnot. The way I look at this is it's really compounded by the fact that most legislatures lack the domain fluency. And I'm going to do a throwback to myself a little bit. I've been talking a lot this year around the idea of the domain translator. It's that subject matter expertise that we bring to the table. Guess what? Our legislatures are not. And it's a generalization. Some of them very well may have domain expertise on how to regulate fast moving technology. My guess is the majority of them don't. And they're going to be influenced by other stakeholders who have deep pockets, who can contribute to campaigns, to gerrymander these type of laws,
Mm.
especially at the policy level. So we need people who can bridge technical AI capability with legal and operational reality. And I know there's people in the US government who are capable of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think they're in the decision-making arena for this, nor do I believe they are being tapped as those subject matter experts, those domain experts. So without that, we're probably going to get some overreach that stifles development or underreach that lets harm happen. The idea of move fast, break things. Hey, okay, we're going to put it out there in the wild. It's going to do these nefarious things. We're going to remove these restrictions. Uh-oh, it uprooted a portion of society or created, additional bias or however it might be used. Oh, we should probably put some rules around that and, figure it out. That might not be the best way for us to move.
I guess in the end, it's going to be like anything new that comes along, trial and error. And that's the only way really to get it, hopefully, close to perfect as possible. Nothing ever is, but we got to cover as many bases as we can, and we'll trip and fall sometimes too. And that's the resilience part. We get back,
Right. And
find those,
right. And
address those gaps.
For sure. And as we try to move fast and break things, think again of those strategic goals, protecting children. Do
Yeah.
you really want to move fast and break things around protecting children? I don't. I'll speak for you for the moment. I'm pretty sure Alex doesn't either. Goal two,
Exactly.
the infrastructure and security. Do we really want to expose that operational technology to, potentially bad actors and technology breaking things? We already have challenges enough in the FAA with flights and restrictions, TSA, all these other things going on, as well as around IP and creator rights. That's a sensitive issue with AI right now because it's been largely trained on other people's domains and IP without compensation. Also, how is this going to impact free speech? All of a sudden, are our words going to be analyzed by our government and we're going to do social currency now? Are we going to pull a China?
Yeah.
And then, the idea of removing innovation barriers, which I think is critical, but it's that balance. We don't want to remove so many barriers that we're breaking things and disrupting society and government and everything. Gosh, we're already doing that. We're not even having AI enact this framework enacted. Anyways, a lot of challenges, and I just wonder if our government is up for it.
Well, they're going to have to. It's the future, right? This is the way of the future. I don't think
It
it's
is.
going to be
It
going
is. And
away. Where we will be living in a Star Trek world soon enough. You know,
fair.
Jason, thank you so much for sharing your time and thoughts on this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Alex. I know we just hit the surface on all this. This is a deep, critical topic. And the important thing is it doesn't stop here. So everyone who's listening, have this conversation with your people. It doesn't have to be political. This is about governance. And if we don't have proper governance and frameworks in place, think about your day to day, then we have chaos and other challenges, lack of accountability, lack of enforcement, so on and so forth. So this is a conversation well worth having. And it all starts with you. Thank you.
On that note, we've come to the end. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Alex.